gap between classes.
Or like in the library where people are studying.
They have them in the library, but it's not a good selection.
I know the gym that I used to go to had a pre-workout vending machine.
I hate all forms of pre-workout. They all like, as if they're made to, they make me hate their naps.
There's so much caffeine in it.
Yeah, it's all like the, oh my god, like the, oh my god, I can't know what the fuck it's called. Creatine, and it makes you like shake.
Oh yeah, well.
I'll take like hours, like I'll be done and I'll be like shaking.
My brother, he's really big into working out, and I remember back whenever he lived near me, I would go to the gym with him a lot, and he'd always have like a sour gummy worm or some sort of like really weird flavored like pre-workout. And he'd have creatine and he'd do all this stuff. It all tasted awful. It tasted just awful. He was like, no, like you get used to it. I'm like, I don't want to.
That's what I feel about like protein shakes. Everyone's not like, no, they're all gross. They taste chalky.
Oh, I can't stand it.
I see you guys when you got lunch, so.
Yeah, we had a little lunch date.
That's fine. I did that. I really walked in with my lunch and a cake, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I did not have time to eat. We finished up a little early. Got lunch.
I think we were there for like until like 12:15 or so.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
At least I had time to go eat, so.
Yeah. Oh, we were good. How many people get hungry?
I think a soft one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, those people showed up.
No one?
I said at least. Yeah.
Did no one show up for you guys?
No,
We
we
had
did.
people.
That's not bad. At least we had some. So I think next year or next semester, if we do this again, I'm gonna start planning it more early, so more time to like get the word out.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, literally the posters are up all around the field. We're put up Monday.
Yeah.
So
Just like earlier.
yeah, earlier we'll start planning earlier.
Yeah. That was a good idea. I think those people will be more inclined to like eat.
Yeah.
You guys can go and really go.
Thank you.
Good thing you have the last one. Didn't feel as good about this one as the last one.
Right there. Huh? What's your show? I'm not high, I'm not here. I don't know. How you doing?
Good work. Thank you.
Excellent. Right up next.
It's everything that's in the exam chair.
Yeah, well, good work on this one.
I think my sweater's still a little much fun.
Yeah, it's just like hard to with my brain.
Apparently, Peelle sucks more back down, they tried and they got it.
So that's like that one day. That's a few weeks ago now. I can't ever be, it was sometimes I remember, I can't.
We did didn't do anything.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just like did a worksheet on my.
No, I was like, every time. Or like we didn't do.
That was my line.
Sounds good, thank you.
I walked out of here and I looked at my iPad, go,
I didn't remember if she said we did.
I don't remember. I don't think so.
I think we just remember.
We need. We haven't put in something annotated. Hang on, I took notes on what we needed.
Oh, okay.
Let me look. Now we just need a new article and that like assignment on Blackboard by next week, I think, not Thursday.
Okay.
So new article that, and then the new Joe citation.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Someday, right? March 11th, all right. Doing good. Well, today we're going to continue learning about the diversity of the eukaryotic members of the microbial world. So, last time we learned about fungi. So we kind of ended on this one here with the mushroom. And we learned that, so far we've learned about 2 groups of fungi. Let's see if we can recall the names of those 2 groups. They're based off of their reproductive structures. I think the first one, the sac fungi, what was that one called? Ascomycetes, that's right, ascomycetes, because they make a sac called the ascus. Yep, and then they have spores inside of the sac. Next Tuesday, you're going to be working with an ascomyces. So just going to give you some more experiences with that. And then we have this mushroom as an example of the second type of fungus or second group. Anyone remember that one? Basidiomycetes, that's right. Spores are located on a structure called the basidium. So within our mushroom, you'll find it in these lower gill-like structures under the cap. All right, so that kind of brings us up to the present slide here. So we're going to continue to learn about this is a third group of fungi. This one is called the Muromycota, or Muromycota. I'm sorry, I mispronounced that. Mucoromycota. Okay, so this is our third group here, the Mucoromycota. I'm having a tough time pronouncing that one. And this one actually makes spores called zygospores containing within a structure called the sporangium. So we have some pictures here to help us visualize that. So here we have our hyphae down below. So that's what this white thread-like structures are down here. And then, when they reproduce, they form this stalk-like columella. So this is named after, like, it's a column-like structure. And then above that is our sporangium. So on the picture on the right, where you see these black circles, those are the sporangiums. And then sporangia is the plural form. So we have multiple sporangia. And then inside of each one are the zygospores. So they're getting super tiny, but they are what give this structure the black color. There's lots of zygospores inside. So this is actually, what we're actually looking at here on the right is a fungus called rhizopus. Rhizopus is also known as the black bread mold. Black bread mold. Okay. So in other words, this is a fungus that commonly grows on old bread. Interestingly, I don't know, has anyone ever baked bread before? Okay, very good. And you may or may not have noticed that, after maybe just a day or two, that bread that you bake can get moldy very quickly. And so why do you think that the bread that you buy from the store doesn't get moldy after like a day or two? Preservatives, that's right, preservatives, chemicals that are designed to prevent the growth of microorganisms like fungi. So, I know it's kind of a balancing act here because, people don't like to consume preservatives because it's not necessarily the best for us. But at the same time, if we don't use them, then our foods will spoil, much faster. I mentioned last time that there are a few cases of fungi that are human pathogens, and we looked at, we saw the example of the foot fungus. So here's like and it can vary in appearance, but here's like one example. Hopefully your foot doesn't look like this, right? But you can kind of see the whitish coloration here on the underside of the foot. So that could be a combination of the fungus and also of the dead skin that kind of sloughs off as the fungus grows. So it's a little bit of both there. But here's a term here that you should be familiar with, and that is the term mycosis. Mycosis. So we have a term in reference to when there's a fungal infection. So we have a mycosis here. Okay. And fungal infections are not super common, but that's fortunately most people who have a healthy immune system are able to combat these pathogens. But it is a concern for those who may be immunocompromised for a number of reasons. It could be genetic. It could be due to environmental exposure. Or maybe you're just a little bit run down. you're a bit malnourished, so you're not really at your peak health, and that will make you actually a little bit more vulnerable to these kind of infections. Okay, so what was the term again to describe a fungal infection? Mycosis, that's right. And then we're looking at, there could be, more terms related to mycosis. So The first is the term superficial. Superficial. So I know at first glance, that kind of term implies that it's not really that important, but that's not the meaning in this case. In this case, superficial means that it's on the exterior. So it could be like on, in this case, on the skin. It could be on hair or nails. So those are referred to as exterior surfaces where fungi could grow. So the presence of that is referred to as being superficial, on the surface. Okay, and then we have, fungi could also grow under the skin. So then we have the term subcutaneous. So subcutaneous, the prefix meaning like below. Cutaneous referred to the cutin and the outer layers, the skin. So here we have a fungus that could grow under the skin. And then a last term here is opportunistic. Opportunistic. So those fungi that normally may not be able to infect a healthy individual, but perhaps one that his health has been compromised in some fashion. So that could be if you have a cut on your skin, for example, because normally you have intact skin, you can fight off these fungi, but if you have an open portal into your body, then you could be susceptible to an opportunistic fungi and an opportunistic infection. Okay, so those are the different kind of terminologies here that apply not only to fungi, but also to other kind of infections as well. Okay, so let's keep moving on here. Okay, so we have some different kind of terms, like superficial, subcutaneous, opportunistic, and another term on this slide is systemic. Systemic. So if the pathogen, in this case the fungi, spreads from its initial point or site of infection to other parts of the body. So for example, I mentioned that if you have perhaps a wound on your skin, maybe on your hand, and that fungus is able to spread to the other parts of your arm, that would be systemic. So we have a systemic fungus, systemic infection or disease. Yeah, fortunately nowadays we have medication, right? Antibiotics for this kind of stuff. But you can imagine that there was a time when we didn't have those antibiotics. So what kind of world was that? Well, it's actually kind of a scary world where a cut could actually lead to your death. Can you imagine that? An accidental cut could lead to your death because it could be a site of infection that could go systemic and there's no way to treat it. I mean, isn't that horrible if you think about it? But that kind of explains why, the lifespans back in the past were just so much lower than they are today. So we like modern medicine. All right, here's some more fun things about fungi. I already talked about last time about the death angel, the Amanita here. So that's a cool name to think about there. That's always a good one to talk about because, you know, these mushrooms do grow in the wild, outdoors, and, you know, some people do harvest them and eat them for food. I mean, there's nothing wrong with you know, foraging for food, your own food. But you have to be really careful with fungi, though, because you know, there are a number that are poisonous, and you know, not all of them are as readily recognizable as the death angel here. So just as a rule of thumb, don't eat wild mushrooms. Okay, don't eat wild mushrooms. All right, so hopefully, but the idea is that, like, as you become more knowledgeable of like plants and other kind of animals and things like that, you could actually, you know, basically forage and get food that way too. All right, let's look at some other examples of toxins. So we talked about the fungal toxin from the death angel, but here's another toxin made by a fungus called Aspergillus. So Aspergillus makes a toxin called aflatoxin. And Aspergillus actually grows in the soil where peanuts actually grow. So I don't know if you ever realized it, but peanuts don't grow in the Jif peanut butter jar. They grow, those plants grow on the surface, but the peanuts themselves are grown in the soil. But that's where this fungus lives, and it can actually grow on the peanut shell. So it's so when those peanuts are harvested from the soil and they're deshelled, it's impossible not to get some of the fungus because that's where they're growing too, and so there's always going to be a little bit of aflatoxin on peanuts and peanut butter. You just can't get away from that. So just as a rule of thumb, you know, because the toxin is carcinogenic there, meaning that it could cause cancer, just kind of regulate your intake of peanut butter and peanut products.
So peanut butter has cancer?
Well, it'll always have some amounts of aflatoxin in there, so just don't go crazy with peanut butter. Good to know, right? I like peanuts too. Okay, here's the second point. Is a really fun one here. Anyone know what rye is? Rye. It's what?
Whiskey.
It's used to make whiskey. What is rye? It's a type of grain. That's right, like wheat, barley, that kind of stuff, rice. There's a fungus called claviceps. So this picture down below shows the top of rye where the seeds are produced, but that's actually where the fungus claviceps can grow. It's on the seeds, so that's the reason why these look brown compared to over here that looks kind of golden color. But anyways, when the claviceps grows on the heads of the rye plant, they cause a disease, and they call it ergot. So this blackening is referred to as ergot. And again, it's a little bit hard to kind of separate the good seeds from the bad seeds. Everything kind of gets mixed together, and then they kind of get pulverized when they make wheat, not wheat, but make flour. And so, but the problem is that the fungus makes a toxin, and when consumed can cause hallucinogenic reactions. So it's kind of like when you guys smoke marijuana or consume marijuana. So this is of interest back in reference to this figure here. I don't know if you ever read about the Salem witch trials that happened out in the Northeast. Apparently, there are people that are acting strangely, like they were on drugs. But people didn't know about those kind of reactions like they do today. And so they thought that, hey, these people are acting strange. They must be possessed by evil. You know, they must be witches. So that's what this drawing here is supposed to depict. Someone acting oddly. Unfortunately, because that person had consumed the claviceps toxin that was causing these weird hallucinogenic behaviors. So that was a kind of interesting connection between, you know, a fungus, its toxin, and history.
Did they find out back then that it was from
No,
Brian?
they didn't know back then, so scientists had to go back and figure that one out. They actually found infected, you know, rye that had been stored, you know, at that time, and then tested it and found, oh my gosh, you know, it's filled with all this toxin, and that's probably what explains the odd behaviors. Okay, so this slide informs us about some of the economic reasons why fungi are important. On the top of our list there is that fungi are the sources of important antibiotics. So we have like penicillin as our example. There's more here, but I'm just kind of pulling some of these out here. Some of the more common ones. Fungi are also used in the production or you know, fermentation for the production of alcohol, and also for the production of baked goods like bread. So we have Saccharomyces. Saccharomyces is you know, the yeast that you can actually buy in the grocery store that you can use for baking. And then I think I already touched upon this one before, that fungi are, you know, pathogens of plants, including the foods that we eat. So remember that we kind of started off this chapter learning about that great Irish potato famine that was a result of the Phytophthora fungus and how it devastated the potato crop. And then we also talked about you know, why we add preservatives in our food to kind of prevent you know, food waste. Well, fungi is so important, can form some interesting symbiotic relationships in our world. So one kind of symbiotic relationship is called a lichen. And here we see that a fungus has formed a mutualistic relationship with green algae. So that's what is depicted down here. So the outer part is the fungus, and then we have the hyphae within, and then these little green circles here represents the green algae. Now there's a lot of different kinds of algae, so they don't necessarily have to be green, but but you know, the different algae kind of give the lichen the different kind of colorations and shades and hues that you see over here on the right. So this, I know it's kind of hard to tell, but this is actually a down tree, like a log, a tree log. But then you can see all these different colors from this kind of like this rust color to a more darker red to a gray, which all represent different kinds of lichens containing different algae. And we learned about lichens a little bit before, that this is a symbiotic relationship. Both benefit, that's mutualism. The algae perform photosynthesis, so they provide sugars to the fungus, and the fungus can use the sugars for food. And then at the same time, the algae can use the fungus as a home in the terrestrial environment. So that's an environment that algae would normally dry up and not be able to survive in, because algae are primarily aquatic. Okay, all right. One of the points on the slide is that lichens are an indicator of air quality. So what does that mean? Indicator of air quality. They talk and tell us about the air.
Right, the more they grow.
But where they grow.
The more they grow.
The more they grow, right? So what do you think? The more they grow,
Better the air.
better the air. Exactly right. If they don't grow well, there's air pollution. Right? So that's the idea. By monitoring how well the lichens are growing, it'll give you a sense of air contamination or air quality. Yeah. I don't know if any of you have like a weather app where it kind of tells you what the air quality is.
It's not good around here. It's not good around here.
And air quality can vary quite a bit, right? From day to day and from place to place. All right, another interesting symbiotic relationship with fungi involves plant roots. So fungi can actually infect the roots of certain kinds of plants, like legumes, like soybean, for example, or clover. And when they infect, it'll cause the roots to swell. And then they'll form these little tumor-like swellings referred to as a nodule. They'll form a root nodule. And it's within that nodule, the fungus will cause the swelling here, and then that will enlarge the root. So the fungus is actually growing both outside, on the outside of the root, so you can kind of see these little, can you see these little thread-like structures here? It looks kind of like a spider web here, webbing, kind of silk-like structures, but this is fungal hyphae. So you have fungi on the outside that gives the root this whitish hue. But what you can't see is that the fungus is also growing inside of the root, like between and inside of cells. So that will cause the root to swell, to kind of enlarge. So it's a combination of those things that will help the root to absorb more water, more minerals, more nutrients from the soil. Okay. So scientists have actually done some really cool studies with plants. It's primarily with like pines and the evergreens where you see this. You can actually grow them like in the laboratory, pine trees in pots, with and without the fungi. Which plant do you think grows better. The one with the fungi, exactly right. Okay, so the plants benefit, but the fungus can also benefit as well because because they're actually growing inside of the root, they can get sugars from the plant because the plants are performing photosynthesis. They're moving sugars down from the leaves to the roots, and then the fungus can use the sugars for food. All right, here's one I have not observed, but this is kind of an interesting example in your textbook here. And that is these leaf-cutting ants. You know, they're named because they can actually, use their mandibles there as like as like scissors, basically, to cut up small pieces of a plant leaf, carry them to a particular, location, maybe their little ant nest, and then there, the decomposition will begin, and that decomposition is aided by these decomposers, which are fungi. And then the ants can actually ingest and consume, both the organic material of the leaf and also will consume the fungi. So in the slide here, they're referring to this as a form of farming, because they're growing the fungus from these small pieces of leaf, and they're making like a little compost garden. So that's kind of interesting. All right, so that's kind of just thrown in there for fun. All right, so we learned about fungi, and now we're going to turn our attention to protozoa. Protozoa, little animal-like organisms. So these are unicellular, so they're tiny, right? Heterotrophs, so they're going to obtain their food from their surrounding environment, which is mostly aquatic. So for example, this one here, this would be like a watery solution outside of it. And then, I don't know if you can tell, you have to kind of squint from where you are, but there's like all these little tiny projections on the outside here. Can you kind of see that? They're transparent, so I mean it's very hard to see here, but it's covered with hair-like projections. Anyone know the term for that? These tiny hair-like projections that help with movement. It's not flagella. It's something else. There's cilia. That's right. And that'll come up on one of these slides here. Let's see here. Here we go. Cilia. Yeah, and this one's colorized, so we can actually see the cilia better. Yeah. It's covering the exterior surface of the membrane of the cell. And so these are modal, they can move organisms.
What's the difference in cilia and flagella then?
Yeah, flagella are a lot longer, and typically you don't see that many flagella on there. And the pseudopod, I'll show you a video of that. It's kind of a what they call a false foot type movement coming up here. That one's it's like a blob moving. Okay, but the point is that they're moving. They're possible. They have the ability to move. How could that be an advantage for the protozoa? Why would that be a benefit for them to be able to move? Why not just stay home? Yeah.
Maybe just find some food.
That's right. They need to eat too, right? All right. Why is this of interest to us? Well, I mean, first of all, they're cool, but some of these do cause diseases. So here we're going to learn about some of those examples. So how can they cause disease? Well, remember that the majority of them are living in watery environments. So it could be a stream, it could be a pond or a lake. And and then how do you ingest them then? Well, you actually drink them. It could be in your water. Right? They're tiny. You don't see them, but they could be in the water, and then you ingest them into your body. So it hits your stomach and your intestines, and then you can have some problems there. So some of these protozoa, they actually will thrive in animal intestines. So they could have two different forms here. One is called the trophozoite. You have the trophozoite. So that's like if it's actually in within an animal body. And that's where it could actually grow, enlarge, replicate. But then there's another form called a cyst. And this is the form that is created when it exits the body, and then when it exits out the intestines in like fecal material. And then the cyst is kind of like an endospore. It's a thick-walled cell. It's designed to survive harsh environments. So think of it as like a dormant cell, like a seed. It can survive winters. It can survive droughts, that kind of thing. And then the idea is that like a seed, if it finds a nice environment, it can, growth can resume, basically. Or if the cyst is, consumed, if it's accidentally consumed by an animal. Let's say the cyst is deposited, in or near water, and then someone accidentally drinks it, then that cyst will transform into the trophozoite form and start growing again. Okay, so here's an example of an infection here. The name of the protozoan is called Cryptosporidium. So it forms the trophozoite and the cyst. It likes to be in water, and in 1993, almost 500,000 inhabitants of the Milwaukee area consumed contaminated water with this protozoan. They got ill, and because it's intestinal, that means they end up with diarrhea. So try to imagine 400,000 people all with diarrhea at the same time. I mean, they still don't know exactly how it happened, but presumably there was a problem with the water treatment facility. that they were all using as their source of water. So, yeah, he's exactly right. So I know we kind of take it for granted, right? When you go to a drinking fountain or you get water from a sink, you kind of assume that it's safe to drink. But sometimes you don't quite realize, well, what was it like before we had water treatment plants? Well, we had diarrhea. That's what we had. Okay, so these protozoans, they're living in the water, they're living within animals, and they are part of the food chain. So they're part of what we call the zooplankton. Now this slide shows us, gives us an idea of what the zooplankton is, but some of these organisms are not protozoans. I mean, but the idea is that the tiny ones, the really small ones, are going to be part of the body of food that's available for other organisms to consume. So like small fish, for example, would eat the protozoa that are part of the phytoplankton. And so they're an important part of the what we call the food chain or food web. All right, we're getting to the pseudopod video here. So some of you may have actually seen this in your like maybe your high school or middle school science courses here. So probably the most famous protozoan is called the amoeba. So here's like a still shot of an amoeba. Remember, does it have a cell wall? No cell wall, right? So that means it's not fixed in its shape, and it can change its shape. So let's see if I can get the video to play here. It'll show us how the amoeba, let me back it up here. Okay, so we have what we call cytoplasmic streaming happening inside of the cell. So cytoplasm is moving, and then because there's no wall, it can the cytoplasm will push the membrane out in different directions. And these projections here are referred to as the pseudopod. Okay, everyone see that? So those are what they call the false foot here. And then, but you can kind of see how it can move as a result.
It's like a blob migrating.
It's a blob migrating. I know, it almost looks kind of like frog-like, but it's not a frog. All right. Have people seen that kind of video before with the amoeba? Have you seen that one? You ever seen that one? Okay. Well, that's why you go to college. All right, let's see here. All right, last slide here. One more disease to talk about, and that's malaria. You've heard of malaria before. It's more common in tropical areas of the world. It's caused by a protozoan called Plasmodium. And has a very complex life cycle. It includes humans, so it can infect and replicate inside of our blood cells. But it can also use mosquitoes as a host too. So it actually uses both, I should say. And then the idea is that the mosquito can help transfer the plasmodium from like one person to another. We call that a vector. So yeah, what about the relevance of malaria? Well, on the slide they mentioned that it results in about 400,000 deaths. It looks like in like 2018, and that's a lot if you think about it. You know, nearly 500,000 people will die due to malaria. In the United States, they used to have malaria as well. So, have you heard of East Lansing, Michigan? Where Michigan State is? I don't know if you've been there on that campus, but that was actually built on a swamp. On the sides of the campus, you can actually see, you know, watery areas with, you know, big trees and all that. Another place, have you heard of Washington, D.C.? Yeah, you have. That's our nation's capital. That was also a swamp, and they had malaria there as well as you know, in the south, like New Orleans is very swampy down there. And so, how do you think they got rid of malaria, like in Michigan? Why don't we see malaria in our nation's capital anymore?
I don't know, is it because it's too cold, the mosquito cannot survive the snow?
I think of another reason.
Their habitat.
Their habitat was destroyed, that's right. So people understood the connection between mosquitoes and malaria. So, you know, rather than trying to kill the plasmodium, they decided to, you know, go after the mosquitoes and, you know, basically drain the swamps, you know, that destroy the mosquito habitats, right? All right, that makes sense, right? All right, I'm about to pass out this heat here, so I think we're going to end it here for today.
I really don't want to, but I didn't feel that.